I'm Cadence DeVuse, and this is Busybody Podcast, episode 5. This episode was originally recorded as a conversation with both co-executive directors of viBe Theater, Brooklyn, New York, Beryl Ford and Michelan LeMonier. Due to my own inexperience as an interviewer, I felt that the original conversation did not fully highlight viBe and the experience of its participants. Fortunately, I was able to interview Ms. LeMonier a second time, as she is not only the co-executive director, but a former viBe Theater participant herself. That conversation is the one you'll hear. Replacing the original conversation is by no means a devaluing of the content, time, or expertise shared by co-executive director Beryl Ford. I am so grateful she was able to meet with me and share her experience with viBe. Ultimately, the conversation chosen for the episode was more cohesive and a better audio experience for listeners, and it's my hope better highlights the full breadth of viBe's programming. Any inconsistencies in her absence are only due to the constraints of having one episode and my own learning curve. They are in no way a reduction or minimization of Beryl Ford, her importance to viBe Theater, and her work. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoy this episode. Here it is. Hello, everyone. This is Busybody Podcast, and I'm Cadence DeVuse. Today, I'm here with Michelan LeMonier, the co-executive director of viBe Theater here in Brooklyn. viBe Theater Experience produces original theater, music, and media written and performed by young women and non-binary youth of color. viBe programming is free and inspires and empowers participants ages 13 through 26 to write, create, publish, direct, and perform personal collaborative theater about the real-life issues they face daily. Welcome to Busybody, Michelan.
Thank you so much.
My kind of fascination with viBe and I'm just amazed. Like, it's so hard to start any project, right? Mm-hmm. And it's so hard to start a project in the arts. And then it's so hard to start a project in the arts for marginalized people. And then it's so hard to start a project in the arts for marginalized people that lasts as long as viBe has. And you have 9 programs, I counted. I mean, it's not like you do a summer camp for 5-year-olds and that's it. Or, an after school program for high school kids. There's all these different arms to the program. Mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit more about on the website, it just says it was founded by a group of high school girls, but do you know more about that origin story? Because there just must have been countless people involved in turning that into what it is today.
Yeah, so viBe's history began in 2002 with a group of 8 girls who wrote and performed a play about, various issues that are important to them. So that range from misogyny war, domestic violence, homophobia, social and economic justice, police brutality, all of it. But it originally started as a performance. So it started as basically a project that was created by Dana Adele and Chandra Thomas when they were students at Columbia University. Mm. So they wanted to get girls together to talk about these issues and to, talk about them in the arts and to put a show around it. So they did the show. Fun fact, before viBe was named viBe, it was named Pulse. Oh. But I think the connotation of Pulse and the sound of it was close to pus or something like that. And I think they changed it after a certain amount of time. But after they did that performance, the girls was like, yeah, we want to do this again. And I also believe that there was an ask for them to come back and do this performance, at another space. But the original intention was when they were invited to do it at another space, they were going to re-perform or redo the same project. But the girls are just like, no, we would love to do this again. We want to make a whole new show. Mm. So from there, they just kind of created the nonprofit, and they realized there was a need for this. There's a need, there was a demand, there was a want, and there was a really big response. So viBe was started in that way. And here we are 20 years later giving
That's amazing.
I think now 10 programs plus,
Yeah, that's amazing. So started by women at Columbia for high school students and then just snowballing from there. Mm-hmm. That's incredible. Where does viBe take place? Where do all these programs happen?
So we are a hybrid nonprofit as of 2020. We started primarily in person. We're based in Brooklyn. But we're now national as of 2020. We cater to both in-person, virtual, and hybrid performances and projects, depending on what the need is. So, for example, one of our programs, our wellness program is primarily virtual. We do hold in-person workshops, and we're hoping to have more in-person sessions, wellness sessions in the future. But right now, that's primarily virtual. Our viBe collab program is hybrid, so they have 2 rehearsals a week, and one of those rehearsals is virtual, and the other one is in person. So yeah,
that's fantastic. And so people can also host you for, where do these rehearsals take place? Where do the performances take place with these?
That's a great question. So the viBe office is located at Art New York. It's a space in a building in Brooklyn, downtown Brooklyn, by the Barclays Center. And they also have rehearsal spaces there that we would hold rehearsals at. We also partner with other theaters and programs to host rehearsals and performances. So we've done performances at the Mark O'Donnell Theater. We've done performances in the Flea Theater, and we have a partnership and have done performances in WP Theater as well. We've also done one amazing viBe Song Makers workshop at the Mayday space. So we are pretty much everywhere. And I believe Art New York also has a Manhattan location that we sometimes use as well.
Wow, that's amazing. So how did viBe survive 2020? You mentioned that in 2020 you became hybrid.
How do we survive? I think the way we survive is very indicative of how we run our programs, which is that we listen to the girls. So we were right in the middle of programming when the pandemic hit and when, the inside mandates started happening. And we wanted to continue to run program, but being fully virtual or being virtual at all was not something that we were familiar with. But we asked them, what do you want to do? We can just stop right here and then resume at a different time, or we can try and see if we can do it over Zoom or do it over Google or do it over, FaceTime. And they wanted to continue. So we actually worked with them and asked them questions about how would virtual work, basically? And we worked together as a staff to make it happen because, one, the youth know how to use technology very well. They know how to, navigate TikTok, Instagram, all those things, all the great things. And so it was actually pretty easy working with them to figure out a way to do the virtual thing. So pretty soon, viBe's virtual aspect has kind of I want to say about 90% of it is on Zoom. There are occasional, if we need to do one-on-ones, we'll work with them if they want to do FaceTime or, do a video call on Instagram or something. But we worked with them, and that's how we became virtual. And that's how we navigated the pandemic. A lot of our program, we actually experimented with so many different ways of doing art virtually, and it opened up so many doors. So there was one thing where, so our viBe Song Makers program again, because that one was a little bit more complicated, because what we usually do in our programs for in person is that after they've created their songs, they've worked with musicians to put tracks together, we'll go to a recording studio at the end for them to professionally record their music. But we couldn't do that during the pandemic. So what we ended up doing was we ordered equipment for them and sent it to their homes.
Wow, that's amazing. So,
I know. And then we we had them record asynchronously. So we'll have them, we had teaching artists that were very versed in how to use at home equipment, because our teaching artists are also artists themselves, right. Whether it be freelance or with, a record or studio or whatever it is. So they're versed in that. So they would teach them how to do it. They would go record on their own, bring it back. They would get some feedback and then send it back. And then we also had really amazing musicians at the time as well that would, listen to the audio and put music over it, or make the music first and then send it to them so they can put the audio. And
wow,
it was amazing. So, it was hard, definitely. I don't want to, take that part out of it. That was really hard, but some really amazing magic came out of that. And we, from there, have been experimenting with other ways of doing things virtually and hybridly, our viBe Company program also had to stop midway, and then we had to transfer to virtual. So what we ended up doing was more of a theatric film instead of a theater production, where they got to be more expansive with how they did their monologue work and how they did their group work. Like we were like, oh my gosh, how are we going to do a group piece together? We can't be together. Like, how are we going to do this?
Right.
So we got to play around with the editing, with the videographer and a video editor, of putting things in different places, having things start at different times, and a lot of accidental great things happened. We're like, oh, we didn't know that can go together, but it's going great together. So that gave us our first theatrical film from Abrupt. That was the name of that show. Abrupt God is a Black Woman. That's the name of it. And it was a big hit. It was amazing. And so we've decided to keep that aspect moving forward. So even with Vibe Collab, they had a full production, but there was, a portion of it that had film in it, and that we were like adding different video cues and so many different things that we got from playing around virtually. And so,
that's incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, I think for so many people, virtual really opened up avenues and not only made certain things accessible, but made different kinds of collaborations possible. It's kind of amazing.
Yeah. And it also gave us a great way to work together as well, even as staff, working from home and figuring that out. It also was really helpful. It was really helpful because there are some aspects of like working from home that we now keep because we want to make sure that we're creating the accessibility to work and, what that looks like. So I think although a lot of bad things came out of the pandemic that were very obvious, but there were some good things that came out as well.
For sure. Absolutely. And on that, I have a question too. With the wellness programming being virtual, was that something that started in 2020 as a response to the pandemic to add some sort of health and kind of physical support?
Yeah, it's good that you asked that, because I was about to say, oh my gosh, I forgot one thing. But one of the bigger things that came out of the pandemic was the wellness program. So it did start out virtually, and it started out because, as everyone knows, once the pandemic hit and everyone had to stay home, there was a very high increase on various things like domestic violence and, suicide rates and mental health illness skyrocketing and being, triggered, that we realized that even though there is an innate healing in the arts, we really wanted to be intentional about that healing and how they can heal from and outside of the specific art making that we're doing, and how to connect those two, right? So the wellness program started with figuring out how can we, provide therapy sessions. It also came into play of how do we destigmatize, mental health in, marginalized communities like the Black community, right? How do we have the conversation about what wellness is? What does it mean to be, healthy mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and all those things? And even exploring the avenues where health isn't as explored or understood or believed, right? Such as like spiritual work, like Reiki sessions, like different things like that, like how yoga can be involved, and how we can get more Black bodies in those spaces that, when you think about yoga, you don't really initially picture, big body Black women, inside of those spaces, but, figuring out how to, make it accessible and to destigmatize what that looks like. So it did start out virtually. We did we did a few sessions in person, and that was really great. So we're trying to figure out how to do more of those as we get into warmer months, because, when it gets to winter, no one really wants to go outside. But even how we can integrate how wellness is with staff, like we've made that like one of the bigger things that we offer at Vibe as a staff and to our participants. Yeah.
That's fantastic. How can I just ask, how did you start to destigmatize the mental health conversation? Clearly you have such a strong community and such an open channel with your participants. What did some of those beginning kind of conversations, or like, what were you putting out there to them?
So one of the bigger things was having like community town hall meetings. We partnered with Liberation Based Therapy, which is a wellness organization. They're amazing. To have professionals really talk about really what it is and help to answer questions around it. We also do a campaign every year around wellness, where we have different conversations. So even our participants and our alum and our community members get to lead conversations around different variations of wellness and health. I remember there was this one IG live that they did around how does social media affect health? And there was another one on purpose, and there's so many conversations that happen, and we feel like the main thing is starting those conversations, because you never know where those conversations can lead. So the community hall conversations were one thing. One-on-one sessions with therapists were helpful, because it can, those one-on-one sessions are very important, because there's maybe something that you aren't able to say in a group or aren't able to say in like the rehearsal room that is affecting like the work that's happening, or affecting like the art that you're creating, that you might be more comfortable talking to with someone one-on-one. So I would say the main thing is starting those conversations. And the second thing is, integrating the parts of the conversation they want to be heard into those artistic pieces, and into even the community that they have. The support is important, to have a sisterhood, to have a tribe that is around you. So when you are going through those hard times, even if you don't want to talk about it, if you just want to be in community and have that support and uplift, the community is there. So creating that space for them to be comfortable, not only speaking, but, being. Being is a huge part of, health, because that is what health is for, is to be. So having a community where you can just be is also another one of those ways that we can destigmatize it. And the last one I would say is acknowledging and believing the narratives of Black girls and Black women and non-binary people is important. So changing the story and what it looks like. So if you've never, if you have a innate thought of, yoga is, thin, fair skin, and whatever. Okay, well then let's show you, a video or a picture of someone who doesn't look like that doing yoga.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's another part of it, is really showing you that it's possible. So yeah, that's a big part of it. One of the bigger things that I think is really amazing that has come out of it, one of my favorites is Black women resting, because that's not something that's like taught. Usually when you're first taught, it's like you have to survive, you have to work, you have to grind, you have to hustle. Grind and hustle culture really, skyrocketed, a lot. It was always there, but now there was, a lens on it. And now there's like, no, I don't want to work. I want to rest. I don't want to work myself to death or, be hyper independent. I want to be able to trust. I want to be able to rest. I want to be able to lean on someone else. That's one of my favorite narrative changes, I think, that has been coming out, and that I would love to lean into more.
Do you follow the NAP ministry?
We do. One of our favorites.
Yeah, I love that one. Yeah, and I think that aspect, when people just hear resting, they literally think really literally like taking a day off, but trust is a huge thing, It
is.
As a hyper vigilant person who has pretty much had insomnia my whole life.
Oh, no.
resting is so much about trust. And I think when I learned that for myself, when I kind of made that connection myself, because even just having insomnia, it's like people are like, oh, have you tried melatonin? And you're like, have I tried a sledgehammer? Because that's what feels like would work. And when you finally, I think when I really started to get more help, I actually worked with a friend who does energy healing work, and she did a lot more of like, let's set up your space so that you actually feel like a sense of protection, a sense of that literally you can rest. You can, you don't need to be on alert all the time. You don't need to be watchful. You are allowed to be unconscious with safety, So I think, absolutely, people coming from a background with any kind of trauma, resting is a huge, place to just encourage and investigate. And I think having what we talked about briefly, just having a space that also is for women and non-binary people, and essentially not for cis men, does create that sisterhood space, or that space where you can literally rest. I mean, it's unfortunate, but everybody knows that when a man enters the space, everybody's kind of, antenna go up a little bit. And I wish that wasn't the case, but when I taught in person, it was just kind of a bummer, when I loved all my male clients, they were all fantastic, but all the women would be there. We'd be getting ready for class. And then the guy would come in and you just feel everyone kind of go, yeah.
Because it's so connected to everything. Like it is a cis male world, right? It's connected to the finances that we have, where women get paid like, half the dollar.
Exactly.
It's connected to everything. And that's why trust is connected to everything. Like you have to trust your body enough to rest, right? You have to trust your surroundings enough to want to rest. Like, why would I want to close my eyes when, there might be a chance I get shot or something? Like, it's just weird. Like,
yeah, it's real.
You never know. Yeah. And what if I rest and, I miss money that could have been made? Now I can't pay my rent. Like it's connected to everything.
Yeah. Yeah. It's major. Well, that's incredible. I just think the programming that you guys offer, it's just so dynamic and it's so unique. I think, honestly, it's just like, as someone who's worked in the wellness space forever, there are so many like little boutique studios or, workshop series or summer programs. And honestly, most of them are a little bit two-dimensional simply just because people don't have the resources to really fill them out. So it almost often feels like we've just kind of started this idea. And then it's like, well, see you at the workshop next summer or something. But you guys have really just gone, it's like the full depth of every possible aspect that could be covered, which is just incredible. So to hear more about your particular story and what it actually feels like to be in the program, can you tell us about how you got involved with viBe?
Oh, yes, of course. So definitely started in high school when I saw a flyer and then I joined viBe. I was very nerve-wracking at first because I was so used to being in like traditional theater spaces, where, Shakespeare is the first thing you'll learn,
Right.
And it's mainly as an actor, you getting a script and you have to memorize the lines, learn whatever acting method technique you use that and, things like that. But when I went to viBe, what I didn't know was there was going to be involvement in, creating the script that you're going to perform. So we were creating original work. It was a very freeing space. So I was always shy when I was in high school. So I did go to performing arts high school, went to Talent Unlimited. But I was never really in any of like the main performances or even in like, the more advanced acting classes where, you get to do a show at the end. I was more in the background. I was self-conscious about anything you could think of, to be honest. I was a lot rounder, bigger when I was younger. And I just felt like, uncomfortable. So when I went to viBe, I went with that same energy, being shy, not knowing if I really wanted to, meet other people. But even the warm-up exercises that we did, I remember the one exercise we did where they asked for each person who was auditioning to, give a song, like your favorite song or like the song you listened to today. And they made some form of playlist where we got to do, I guess it was like dance freeze or freeze dance, where like you dance when the music is playing, but then you freeze however you freeze in a tableau.
Classic and that was theater game.
I know, right? It's a classic. And I was nervous because the song I had learned that day was Fall Out Boy. And back then, Black people listening to alternative, even though I'm jacking it. I'm pretty sure every Black person was listening to alternative music back then, but no one wanted to admit it.
I did think I maybe misheard you.
Like everyone was listening to hip hop, but like everyone was listening to Fall Out Boy and Paramore. Everyone was, but what was popular wasn't that. So I put on Fall Out Boy and everyone was dancing to it, and we did the freeze it, but it didn't feel like there was any judgment. Like, I feel like that's one thing that you do feel in a lot of traditional like theater spaces is like,
sure. Super
there's like that pressure. Yeah, exactly. There's that pressure, but there was no pressure in that space. And I think that's what made me fall just a little bit more in love or back in love with theater than I was before. And then I think there was this very pivotal moment later on. So after that program, I joined a lot more other programs. Like I was a part of viBe Solos, where we get to do 15-minute monologues. I got to be a part of viBe Leadership Institute, which is more about professional development. And we got to see like the back end of doing shows. But there was this pivotal moment in high school where I did one of the shows, and the theater that we did the show in had specifically asked me to do that piece at a different event that they were doing. So it wasn't a part of the organization, but they wanted to partner with us and have me do that performance at their event. And I was like, oh my gosh, really? Me? Just me? And I did it. And I kind of had that moment of, wow, maybe I really can do this. Like, maybe I can, perform. Like, maybe there's something there. If
How old were
someone
you at
like
that
kind of 13, 14.
Oh my goodness. It's like so
Crazy.
young. That's amazing.
Thank you. Yeah. I'm pretty sure it was maybe it was my junior year. So maybe like 15.
Yeah.
15. I'm gonna just say 15, but yeah. So that was a good pivotal moment for me. And then it just made me want to do more and more shows. So that's how I also joined Vibe Company, which is for our 18 plus. Well, actually, funny story. I left Vibe to go to college, and I had in my junior year declared an arts management minor. Because I knew when I was younger I wanted to do nonprofit. I don't know what it was. I just really wanted to start a nonprofit. So I actually reached out to Toya, who was the then executive director, if there were any internship positions that I could put towards the credits for that minor. So I interned with them over the summer. It was fun. So I got to both do the back end things and perform with the high schoolers to kind of help get them more comfortable. And at the end of that internship, Toya looked at me and was like, "You're graduating this year, right?" I was like, "Yeah." "Hit me up afterwards. You might have a position for you." I'm like, "Oh my gosh, That means I might be doing well." So I did. I did a summer abroad, and then after the abroad internship was done, I contacted Vibe, and I started out as an apprentice, so an intern. It was very, very nerve-wracking because a lot of the professional development was around shadowing, was around, learning from experience and asking questions. There were professional development opportunities that, the ED would send me to. But it was nervous because I was always kind of the youngest person in those rooms. Because I graduated, being 21 and fresh out. There was so much I had to learn, and I was determined to learn it, but also terrified. My heart would be pounding every time I would go into space, and it would be hard to want to speak because I'm like, "Dag, I must be stupid or something." Because I feel like the questions I would either ask are maybe it's obvious. What if that question was already answered, but I just didn't, But
you're very self-aware 20-year-old. I feel like a lot of people in their 20s just blabber. And assume everyone wants to hear them.
Honestly, I don't think my anxiety would allow me the privilege. So I'm pretty sure it was definitely some anxiety there. But from there, I then became the operations assistant where we got an operations manager. And then the operations manager left and I became the operations director.
Fantastic.
Or I believe the programs manager. And then I became the operations director. And then as our past ED was leaving, she put me and Beryl at the helm as the co-EDs because she put that much faith and belief in us, which felt amazing. I mean, I low-key disagreed at the time. I was like, I don't know if I'm ready to lead an organization that...
Yeah.
Usually those who are in their 40s and up are usually leading an organization. And I'm only 25. Well, at the time I was 25.
Oh my gosh.
And, but she believed that we could do it. So we've been doing it ever since. It's been terrifying, but exciting at the same time.
When was that? What year was that you took over?
So we fully got into our positions, 2021 of March or April, I believe. Yeah. 2021. So, starting last year, September was our first full fiscal year in our position. So we're ending our first full fiscal year now in our positions.
Are you feeling more confident?
Oh, definitely. One of the things I definitely learned, and I think what she was always right about, is that you really, you're not going to know that you're able to do it unless you're in the room doing it. And no matter what job you're doing, you're going to have to learn on the job, even if it's the same position somewhere else. Each organization runs differently. And honestly, I've had to, have a lot more emotional growth and maturity in this position. And I'm grateful for it. Yeah.
Yeah. I hear that. I was 28 or 29 when I started my studio, and I had staff that were older than I was and all that kind of stuff. And I really had pretty much zero experience. doing management or running a business. And I made a lot of mistakes, a lot of mistakes, but I also, I mean, it just fast tracks you to being more mature. And, you know, I read about how to manage people. I took workshops. I tried to just, bolster the places that I knew I needed more experience, and all of that's good, you know?
Yeah, you can really do anything you put your mind to, like really anything. And I'm so happy that Toya was my mentor, because not only did she believe, you know, that youth should be leading and that youth can lead, but she, you know, she put her money where her mouth is, you know, essentially, and she created programs and created spaces for us to lead. So right now, the organization is run by a BIPOC femme-identified staff of 30 and under.
Yeah. Wow. That's incredible. Wow.
I think we're doing a pretty good job.
It seems like it. On that, can you tell us about the apprenticeship that's possible there at VIBE?
Yeah, so our VIBE Apprentices program runs all year round, separated into 2 to 3 seasons. We have our fall season, spring season, and summer season. And our VIBE Apprentices program is a professional development based program that allows our alum who are interested in careers in the theater sector in a nonprofit arts sector to develop their leadership skills through different hands-on experiences, both virtually and in person. And they collaborate with different professionals in the field, you know, that are providing the space to develop tools for them to work in their chosen field. So they can work with either our teaching artists to learn how to lead our programs, or to, you know, to see what it's like to offer your artistic practice as a teacher and a facilitator and what goes into that. They can work with those on the admin side. So they can work with those in like the development to see what goes into grant writing and fundraising. They can work with our marketing team to figure out how to, you know, market a nonprofit. They can work with operations to see what it's like to make sure an organization is running smoothly. They can also work with, you know, senior leadership in the artistic position, where they can see what it's like to, you know, plan a program, right? So they can do it. Right now, we're working on broadening our internships to, you know, do partnerships in other fields as well. But that's where we are right now. Our summer is like our busiest when it comes to apprenticeship, because everyone wants to work in the summer because, you know, school's out, and all of our programs are paid. So VIBE Apprentices has always been paid for the most part, but all of our programs participants are paid to participate.
That's fantastic. That's so important, because what's that phrase, like high visibility, low pay or something like that? Like most internship and apprenticeship things are like, oh, you're getting great experience, but going broke at the same time. And which also obviously
yes, as if
people, your payment is your exposure or whatever, but it often obviously means that if you have a low income background, you literally just can't take that opportunity. So
not at all. And it's not like you can, you know, pay bills with experience. A lot of our participants, depending on what background they are, they're helping their families to, you know, pay rent and pay for groceries. And some are even, you know, saving up for college or trying to save up to pay back loans from college or whatever the case may be. So I don't think there should ever be like an either or situation. We definitely want to get rid of that starving artist model. I don't think it serves anybody.
No. So my last question for you is twofold. What is the best way for someone to be involved or support VIBE as a person of color and as not a person of color? Because I mean, my first instinct was like, I want to teach something at VIBE, but it feels like, as you were saying, representation is really important. So people don't need my face teaching. But how can someone support or become involved who's not a person of color, but also for everyone out there who is?
So I do want to make clear that even though our organization serves BIPOC, young women, and gender expansive youth, and that we do center representation, we also don't discriminate. So if there's anyone who has the experience and wants to support us, you know, either, you know, as a teaching artist or a volunteer, we love volunteers, or someone who just wants to lend their resources, we always welcome that. Even our participants, we've had those who identify as, you know, Caucasian or white or whatever they identify as, and we still welcome them. We still welcome them in our programs. We just do it with the full intention and the acknowledgement that we're bringing everyone's narrative to the forefront. So also to kind of re-answer that question you asked before about why Black girls, why young women of color, is that our curriculum is based off of targeted universalism. It's the theory that if we focus on or bring those who are furthest from, the center and, focus on their narratives and stories and bring them to the center, that we can bridge that gap, right? So everyone should hear these stories and everyone should have part in creating the plays that tell these stories. So
right.
if you are someone who's BIPOC or non-BIPOC, we welcome volunteers, we welcome donors, we welcome those who want to give their resources, whether it be experience, networks, money. As sad as it is, it's still a money
for sure. Yeah, fundraising.
Right. So we want to continue to be able to pay them for their work and continue to fund the programs that we have. So donations are always welcome as well. Follow us on social media, share the work, share the social media pages, and even the videos that you see, and join our newsletter.
And I saw on your website you can literally invite a performance to your organization, and you also have like a travel one too. So I just want to make that clear to listeners out there. If someone works at a school in San Francisco or something, it's possible to invite you guys out.
Oh yes, definitely. Invite us out. We would love to go to San Francisco where it's nice and sunny.
Well, that is fantastic. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today. And I will be posting everything in the show notes for people listening so you can follow and support. And thank you again. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.